Yesterday, the Bank of Canada decided to cut their policy rate yet again. The first cut in over 6 months. And yet, it tells us everything we need to know about how the Bank of Canada views Canadian citizens. When a central bank decides it would like to cut rates, what it really means is that they're going to let the currency weaken. They're going to let inflation rise. Every time they make this choice, they choose to finance government debt and irresponsible spending at the expense of the country's very own citizens, of you and me and people like us. In this video, we'll talk about the future impacts of these rate cuts. We'll talk about the unintended consequences that manifest themselves in society due to irresponsible monetary and fiscal policy. And we'll also take a look at the inner workings of the Canadian economy to get a better understanding of why the bank has decided to cut these rates. Let's get into it. It was really no big surprise that the Bank of Canada came out yesterday and decided they were going to cut their policy rate. We were talking a bit about this throughout last week on this channel, saying that the Fed needs to cut rates, and when the Fed cuts its rates, then it will give room for other global central banks to follow suit. And what we saw yesterday was the Fed did exactly that. When central banks decide to cut rates, this is one of the most obvious indicators that an inflationary regime is going to ignite and begin to foster within that country's economy. And that benefits a very niche group of people, asset holders specifically. And so when I say the Fed chooses to finance the government and line the pockets of these asset holders at the expense of the general population, it's true. Because inflation affects the everyday consumer, the everyday saver, the most. And it manifests itself in consumer confidence in Canada. And now this is what I think is pretty interesting, because depending who you ask, consumer confidence is going to be very different. If you ask somebody like a boomer who has a house, a fully loaded 401k or retirement account, who has assets, they'll give you a completely different answer than somebody who doesn't have a house, is struggling at their job, is struggling to make rent, living paycheck to paycheck. Just like in the US, we're beginning to see wealth gaps explode. And now our economy has essentially fractionalized into two different ones. Those with assets, those without. On top of that, household debt to income is still above 150%. Meaning households are leveraged about 1.7x for every dollar they have. They're $1.70 in debt just to get by. Now, yes, it's coming down. Now, is that due to the currency losing value and other factors? Maybe, but the fact is it's still high. People are still struggling. The last month we had a surplus was last year. So all of 2025, we've been running trade deficits. Our GDP is contracting, households are over-leveraged, and consumer confidence is plummeting. Now, all of these factors that I just showed you point to an economy that has been suffering from stagflation for a little too long. We as a country are running trade deficits. Our GDP is contracting due to this. Therefore, workers do not get paid near enough to outpace, let alone keep pace with the inflation that has been slowly eroding your purchasing power. Because people are so squeezed for money and for time, this results in a population whose health is degrading rapidly. They have no time to get healthy. They have no time to eat healthy foods. They have no money to facilitate any of this. And yet healthcare costs keep rising. The government keeps subsidizing an unhealthy population, giving them no incentive to get out there and seek it for themselves. Granted, they had the opportunity. Would they be able to? Maybe. Here it is in a chart. Healthcare costs keep rising. Obesity rates are climbing into the high 30%, guys. High 30%. 1 in 3 adults you meet will be clinically obese. Now, is that an economic problem? Probably. Are there other factors? Absolutely. But we cannot ignore the fact that obesity rates are climbing. Population is suffering. It's my belief that all of this can be traced back to poor monetary and fiscal policy. When the currency loses its life force, when its value is siphoned away from the consumer, they need to put more of their time and energy into working just so they can earn that extra dollar so they don't get evicted. In turn, they're replacing that energy that was siphoned away from the currency with their own vitality, their own health. They are sacrificing their own health for a worthless piece of paper. This one hits pretty close to home, and it's the overdose rate in Canada, and it is still climbing. It averages out to about 12 people every day in Canada die from an opioid overdose. And it is mainly young adults. My generation, the one before me and the one under me. We are the ones who are suffering the most here. And this is what happens in the late innings of long-term debt cycles, of currencies that are no longer pegged to the laws of Mother Nature through commodities. Like I said earlier, the wealth gaps have become so large, our economies are fractionalized into two portions. There are those that have the assets, those that thrive in inflationary environments. Talking the boomers, those who are lucky enough to hold stock, and those of us that have chosen to opt out through Bitcoin and potentially even some gold. And then there are those left to deal with the consequences of centralized authorities controlling monetary policy. Those are the people that are suffering the most. Their savings are being destroyed. They're sacrificing their health, vitality, and youth just to make an extra buck to support not only themselves, but just the idea of maybe one day owning a home and raising a family. How do we stop this? How can you, as an individual, take back your life, your energy, and your time? You can make the choice to funnel those worthless pieces of paper that are losing you value, siphoning away your time and energy. You can choose to put it into assets like Bitcoin that preserve your energy over time, guys. It is a choice you must make, or stay stuck in this system that will eat you alive. If you guys enjoyed this video, make sure to drop a comment down below. Let me know your thoughts. Smash that like button. Hit that subscribe button as well. I'll catch you guys in the next video.